birth to 1 year old. Principles of infancy: learning how to walk, learn to eat solid foods, begin to talk and communicate with others, learn to trust, begin to have relationships with family, and have a stable sleeping and eating pattern. Milestones of infancy include standing alone, saying mama, dad, and uh-oh, plays peekaboo and patty cake games, points with index finger, puts things in his mouth, and drinks from cups.
What year were you born? On what date? What day of the week was it? And did your parents tell you anything about the day you were born?
I was born in 1953, let's see, a Thursday at, I think, like 2 a.m. And my parents never told me anything about the day I was born.
What day is it of the month?
The 8th, August 8th.
Where were you born?
In Huntington, New York.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
When were they born?
Oh, well, my oldest brother, he was born, he's 75 now. And I have a brother that is 74 now, and a sister that's 73 now, and a brother who is 71, and then myself, which is 53. And I was born in 53. So I'm 69 now, and then I have a younger sister who is 64.
Do you have a memory of each of them from growing up?
Mostly my younger sister.
Interview connections to infancy. These questions relate to infancy because it was talking about my grandma's birth and the day she was born. Including questions about my grandma's siblings fit into this stage of life because this is the age she would have started forming bonds with the different family members, as well as they all were born except for her younger sister. Toddlerhood, the 1st through 3rd years. Principles of toddlerhood: able to withstand separation from primary caregiver, become less dependent on primary caregiver, use words to communicate, and gain control of bladder and bowel function. Milestones of toddlerhood include running easily, talk well enough for others to understand, copies adults and friends, dresses and undresses self, plays make-believe with dolls, animals, and people, and naming things in picture books.
What's your first most vivid memory?
Well, it's not the best one, but I remember I used to run to the door when my mom went out of the house, and I would cry and scream, and they would just let me. It must have been some anxiety thing.
What was the apartment or house that you grew up in?
It was a house, and it had 1 bathroom with 6 kids and 2 parents.
Can you describe the neighborhood you grew up in?
The neighborhood, well, there wasn't many houses on our block, but there was a park like down the street, not too far. And then in the corner, there was, where the ice cream man used to come, was a little white church.
How did your family earn money?
Well, my mom didn't work, and my dad was a sheet metal worker in New York.
How many?
Interview connections to toddlerhood. My grandma's answer to her first memory was during the toddlerhood stage of her life. In my opinion, it was appropriate to categorize where she lived in her neighborhood as being a part of the toddlerhood stage because she lived in the same house while growing up, and this would be the time she would start to remember it. Including how my great-grandpa earned money in this section works because this is about the age my grandmother was when he started to work there. For my first source, I used the sheet metal union that my great-grandfather used to work at. The Sheet Metal Workers Local Number 58 in New York has been operational for over 100 years. They provide qualified sheet metal workers for construction. The sheet metal union deals with HVAC systems, architectural, and other uses for sheet metal. They maintain an apprentice program for sheet metal workers. Preschool, 3 years old to 6 years old. The principles of preschool include becoming better at speaking and understanding, perform self-care, learn gender differences and develop sexual modesty, learn right from wrong, start to play with others, and develop family relationships. Milestones of preschool include they can use the toilet by themselves, they can tell a simple story and use sentences, demanding at times but cooperative at others, and they know about everyday items like money and food.
What were you like as a child?
Quiet, withdrawn. It was pretty much just not to be seen or heard from, because there's so many kids, and at that time the parents, you had to respect the parents. Whatever I had to say didn't count.
Interview connections to preschool. The question about what my grandma was like as a child is valid as a part of the preschool stage because preschool age is when children start to play with others as well as form familial bonds. School age, 6 years old to 9 or 10 years old. Principles of school age include develop physical and social skills to play games, learn to get along with peers, learn behaviors and attitudes for one's gender, develop a conscience and morals, learn basic reading, writing, and math skills, and develop self-confidence. Milestones of school age include losing baby teeth and permanent teeth erupt, riding two-wheeled bikes, playing in groups, reading, writing, grammar, and math skills develop, and play activities have purpose and involve work.
Have you ever had any nicknames as a child or as an adult?
Yes, I did have a nickname, and I never liked my real name. So I didn't use my real name until I went into the working field after my kids kind of got at a decent age, and the nickname was Butts.
Interview connections to school age. My grandma said that she got her nickname from other kids at school around this age, making it suitable for this developmental stage. Late childhood, 9 or 10 years old to 12 years old. Principles of late childhood include become independent of adults and depend on oneself, develop and keep friendships with peers, understand physical, psychological, and social changes, develop moral and ethical behavior, develop greater muscle strength, coordination, and balance, and learn how to study. Milestones of late childhood include girls have growth spurts, aware of mistakes of adults, some girls hit puberty, many permanent teeth erupt, and friend or peer groups are centers of activities.
What big world events do you remember from the time you were growing up?
John F. Kennedy, assassination, and an election too, because my dad did campaigning for John F. Kennedy with his truck and painted his truck and put big posters up and went to the rallies and stuff. And Martin Luther King, when we walked on the moon. We always thought the Russians were coming on Long Island because everybody always said the Russians used to come from the ocean onto Long Island as spies.
Interview connections to late childhood. This question is relevant to this stage of life because this was the age most of the topic mentioned happened. For example, during JFK's assassination, my grandma was 10, and while MLK was popular, my grandma was between the ages of 9 and 14. For my second source, I chose the moon landing. July 20th, 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin become the first people to walk on the moon. This was televised across the United States, and many watched this history happen. Adolescence, 12 years old to 18 years old. Principles of adolescence include accepting changes in the body and appearance, develop relationships with others and attract partners, prepare for marriage and family life, become independent from parents and adults, prepare for a career, and develop morals, attitudes, and values needed for society. Milestones of adolescence include growth spurts, menarche in girls, ejaculation happens to boys, secondary sex characteristics start to develop, become more independent from parents, and think about what they want to do career-wise.
When you were a teenager, what did you do for fun?
Well, when I was a teenager, I pretty much just did like a drum and bugle corps, and that was it. You know, at one point I played the drums, and at one point I played the cymbals. I wasn't very musical at all. But my brothers were. They played the horns and stuff.
When did you learn how to drive?
I learned how to drive when I was 16, and my boyfriend at the time taught me, and I had a 1962 black Volkswagen Bug, and it was on Long Island, and it was fun driving because it was in the snow and you can go do circles and stuff. So,
What was your first job?
my first job was, I worked when I was a junior in high school. I worked in a picture frame company that framed pictures and made bookcases and different things, because all my majors in school were art, and so that's where I worked first, and it was like $2.25 an hour.
What did you like or not like about it?
My job? I liked it all. It was fun.
How did you meet your spouse? What did you like about him?
What did I like about him? I met him at school. He was cute. It was, I liked him a lot. And so that was pretty much my first boyfriend. And I ended up marrying him when I was a senior in high school. And that was the first year you can, 18-year-olds can vote.
When did you get engaged?
I got engaged when I was a senior in high school.
Where did you get married?
In Smithtown at a Catholic church.
What was your wedding like?
Funky. So, we just had the relatives, and then we had all our friends, and I know we got a stereo for a wedding gift from one of our friends, and we got some albums. So it was different from nowadays.
How many?
Interview connections to adolescence. Subsequently, all of these questions relate to my grandma's adolescent stage because she was a teenager in all the responses. She married while still in high school, involving many principles of adolescence, like attracting partners and developing relationships, preparing for marriage and family life, and becoming independent from parents and adults. It should be noted that the marriage questions could be considered in the young adult stage. However, it is more pertinent in the adolescent stage because she was still in high school when it happened. For my third source, I used the frame center that my grandma worked at for her first job. The frame center originated in Smithtown, New York in 1976. They feature expert craftsmen with over 30 years of experience in state-of-the-art equipment. They feature framed and unframed works in the store. Young adulthood, 18 years of age to 40 years of age. Principles of young adulthood include choosing education and a career, selecting a partner, learning to live with a partner, becoming a parent and raising children, and developing a satisfactory sex life. Milestones of young adulthood include selecting a partner, oftentimes people marry, learn to work together and make decisions with partner, and having children.
How many children do you have?
I have 4 kids.
When were they born?
Well, I have the oldest, 75. The second one is 77. The third one is 79. And the fourth one was 81.
How did you decide what to name each?
Very difficult. I just like the first one was when I moved to Arizona, I used to live in Prescott, and the place I worked at, a bakery place, was called Julianne's. So I like Julianne. That was my first child. Laura, we just liked it, And then Justin, we liked the first name, and we gave him the middle name as his grandpa and his grandma's last name. And then Melissa, I liked Melissa because I liked Little House on the Prairie.
What is your favorite story about each of your children?
Okay. Well, we'll go with Melissa, the youngest. When she was little, she learned how to ride a bike, but she was so proud to have little cowboy boots that when she was riding her bike with the cowboy boots on, she ran into the back of a car parked on the side in front of the house. So that I remember that one. And then with Justin, there was a couple, that was the only boy. I remember him going out to the car and our driveway was at a slant, and he got in there and moved the shift handle, and I saw him, the car rolling out of the driveway, and I took off and ran after. I got him, and he didn't hit the people's house behind us, you know, like where the driveway was. So, and then Julie and the oldest, she used to like to hang out in the backyard with Laura, her younger sister, and she used to like to put mud in her mouth and just hang out and chew and make mud in her mouth. It was like, ugh. And I do remember when Julianne, when I came home from the hospital, she couldn't wait for me to bring home our little baby sister. And she had little pink overalls on, and she sat on a coffee table waiting for me to walk in with the baby. So, and then Laurie G, let's see, you know, she just was all over everywhere. She was the middle child, so she just was in charge. She seemed to take charge of everybody.
Interview connections to young adulthood. These questions belong in this stage since it was the age range that she had all of her children and all or most of the stories happen, along with the fact that it fits with the principles of young adulthood, like becoming a parent and raising children. Middle adulthood, 40 years old to 65 years old. Principles of middle adulthood include adjusting to physical changes, adjusting to having grown children, develop leisure time activities, and adjusting to aging parents. Milestones of middle adulthood include physical changes, children leaving home, develop hobbies and pastimes, and menopause happens in females.
How do you feel about raising your children?
Well, after the fact, I think I did a good job because they're all functional citizens, and they seem to be all happy and they got their lives in order. But growing up, I always wanted to do more than what my parents did, which was nothing, you know, so I tried to, from that time period, we weren't rich or anything, but my kids didn't suffer. They always had something on the table and clothes to wear, not name brand stuff like nowadays.
What was the best part and what was the hardest part of raising your kids?
The best part was just hanging out. We didn't really go on many vacations at all. If we did, it was always camping and stuff because we were kind of low income, so we didn't really do a whole lot. We went to Disneyland once when Melissa, the youngest, was...
Interview connections to middle adulthood. The questions pertaining to raising her children is appropriate for this stage for the reason all of her children were moved out or were moving out during this period. Due to this, she would be able to describe the whole experience and feelings about raising her kids. It also is appropriate in this stage since it fits with the principle of adjusting to adult children. Late adulthood, 65 or older. Principles of late adulthood include adjust to decreased strength and loss of health, adjust to retirement and reduced income, cope with a partner's death, develop new friendships and relationships, and prepare for one's own death. Milestones of late adulthood include retirement, developing new relationships, physical changes, and deciding on housing options.
What have been the 3 biggest news events during your lifetime and why?
Well, like I was saying, John F. Kennedy, the assassination, Martin Luther King, even Bobby Kennedy assassination, the big events, 9/11, of course, and just Vietnam as well.
If you could go back to any age, what age would it be and why?
40. 40 was good because my kids were pretty much on their own, getting their lives on track, and it just was a little bit more at ease on figuring out who I was at that point.
If you live another 20 to 30 years, what will you do? And do you want to live another 20 to 30 years?
Well, I always thought I wanted to live till 80. I didn't want to live any longer and be really old and have to be a burden on my family. And I think 80 is a good number because every 20 years, you're at different levels. So I thought 80 would be good.
Interview connections to late adulthood. All of these questions asked for this stage of life belong to this stage of development because they are all looking at my grandma's entire life until that moment. For my fourth source, I researched world events that happened during my grandma's lifetime. Firstly, the JFK and Bobby Kennedy assassination. On June 5, 1968, Senator Robert Kennedy was assassinated after winning the California presidential primary. This happened 5 years after his brother, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. Secondly, the Vietnam War, a war fought between Communist North Vietnam and Republic South Vietnam. The war was intensified by the Cold War going on between the U.S. and Soviet Union. More than 3 million were killed over this war. Thirdly, the 9/11 attack. Terrorists associated with the Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 planes and carried out attacks against the U.S., 2 hitting the World Trade Centers in New York and 1 hitting the Pentagon, and 1 crashing before it hit anything. Almost 3,000 Americans died during these attacks.